what if the endings you know were lies? Hollywood has a dirty history of burying scenes that went too far, too violent, too political, too disturbing. From twisted conclusions that disappeared to entire reels destroyed by studios, these endings were never meant to survive, but they did, and we found them. Here are 11 banned endings you were never supposed to witness. Number 11. Planet of the Apes, 1968. The Statue of Liberty ending is one of the most iconic in science fiction history, but in several parts of the world it was banned outright. In countries where anti-American sentiment was politically risky, or where U.S. allies sought to maintain favorable propaganda images, censors ordered distributors to cut the ending entirely or fade out before Taylor's realization. The twist, Earth's destruction by man, was viewed as too subversive. It was feared that such a bleak portrayal of humanity's failure would stoke Cold War anxiety or fuel anti-nuclear sentiment. What many do not know is that the original Rod Serling script featured an entirely different ending, where Taylor discovers an advanced human metropolis in ruins. That idea was scrapped due to budget limitations, and the Liberty twist replaced it. Ironically, that twist, born from financial constraints, became cinematic legend. Yet for decades in Europe, South America, and even parts of Asia, this ending was either edited, trimmed, or censored by the local censors. Modern digital versions now restore the scene globally, but the fact remains, this was once a banned final shot, a dystopian warning too dangerous to show. Number 10. Freaks, 1932. Todd Browning's Freaks shocked audiences long before the final act, but the original ending was even more brutal and grotesque. In early test screenings, audiences fled the theater when the Freaks exacted their revenge on the villainous trapeze artist Cleopatra. The final scene showed her being mutilated in graphic detail, transformed into the squawking duck woman, her body scarred grotesquely. But that was not the worst part. Studio execs at MGM were horrified. Under pressure from morality watchdogs and anti-disability groups, they slashed over 30 minutes of footage, including the entire original ending. What remains is an eerie but toned-down coda. The lost ending reportedly included more explicit retribution against the other villains too. Scenes now considered lost forever. MGM buried the footage. The film was banned outright in the United Kingdom for over 30 years and in many U.S. cities during its original release. What survives today is only a sanitized version of Browning's grim fairy tale. But cinephiles continue to search for the original climax, a horrifying final vengeance sequence so disturbing it was banned not just from screens, but from history itself. Number 9. Sunset Boulevard, 1950. Billy Wilder's noir masterpiece opens with a corpse in a pool, but that was not how it was supposed to begin. The original cut opened in the morgue. Dead men narrated the story from the afterlife, their voices echoing in a room full of corpses. This macabre choice horrified preview audiences. They laughed nervously at the talking dead, mocking what Wilder intended as grim reflection. Censors feared backlash. Studio execs panicked. Wilder was ordered to recut the film. He kept the narration but removed the morgue sequence, entirely replacing it with the now famous pool flashback. The original morgue intro, surreal, grotesque, and daring, was banned by the studio itself. It was shelved indefinitely, and only fragments survive in production stills and rumors. This wasn't the only cut. Even the ending where Norma Desmond descends the stairs in madness was softened by removing some of the more erratic takes. Wilder's vision was always one step darker, but Hollywood was not ready. What we have is a masterpiece. What was banned may have been a masterpiece beyond noir, a meditation on death too literal for its time. Number 8. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, 1932. In Depression-era America, few films hit as hard as I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. Its final scene, a fugitive melting into the shadows, whispering the words, "I steal," left audiences stunned. But in many parts of the US, that ending was banned, censored, or replaced. The reason was simple. It embarrassed the establishment. It suggested the justice system was broken and the chain gang system inhuman. The studio Warner Brothers fought hard to keep the ending. Southern censors and conservative officials pushed back. In several states, the final scene was cut entirely. Alternate endings were briefly considered where the protagonist finds redemption or turns himself in. But these versions were never officially released. What made it to the screen in some cities was a mutilated version without the final whisper, stripping the film of its most devastating message. The film had real-world consequences. It inspired public outrage, reform movements, and even legal reviews of Southern prison systems. The ending became too powerful for its own good. It was banned not for what it showed, but for what it provoked, a national reckoning on justice and cruelty. Number 7. Dr. Strangelove, 1964. Stanley Kubrick's dark satire on nuclear annihilation nearly ended in absurdity, with a full-blown food fight in the war room. The original ending had all the generals throwing pies and slipping on banana peels as the world burned. It was surreal comedic chaos meant to underline the insanity of Cold War decision-making, but Kubrick cut the entire sequence just before release. The reason was complicated. President John F. Kennedy had just been assassinated, and the satirical tone no longer felt appropriate. Kubrick feared backlash. The scene was also out of step with the tone of the preceding chaos. Critics later praised the decision. But the food fight ending was already filmed. It was even included in early promotional materials and draft cuts. Today, it is considered one of the most infamous deleted endings in cinema history. It wasn't just removed, it was buried and banned from ever appearing again. The original footage is said to be destroyed, though stills exist. We almost got nuclear doomsday capped off with a cream pie to the face, until real-world tragedy banned the laughter. Number 6. The Magnificent Ambersons, 1942. Orson Welles' The Magnificent Ambersons was butchered by its own studio. Welles originally ended the film on a note of poetic despair. The Amberson family falls, the mansion decays, and the final moments were filled with silent shadows and collapse. But RKO hated the bleak tone. Without Welles present, they ordered reshoots, rewrites, and a re-edit. The tragic ending was deleted. What audiences saw was a tacked-on reconciliation between Eugene and Fanny, happy music, optimistic narration, and a fade-out with false hope. The studio claimed the original ending was too depressing for wartime audiences, but in doing so, they destroyed Welles's vision. Over 40 minutes were removed and never recovered. The original ending is considered one of the greatest lost sequences in cinema history. Welles was devastated. Critics would later call the studio's version an act of cinematic vandalism. That final shot, gone forever, represented the death of American aristocracy and the fading of old grandeur. It was banned not because it offended, but because it dared to show how legacies rot when unchecked, and the studio could not allow that. Number 5. Laura, 1944. The film Laura became a noir classic, known for its haunting atmosphere and romantic mystery, but it was originally meant to be something very different. In early drafts and internal storyboards, Laura Hunt was never alive at all. She had died. What the audience saw was a ghost, a manifestation of obsession haunting Detective McPherson. The final scene was to reveal this devastating twist, that he had fallen in love with a fantasy long gone. Studio executives panicked. A ghost story did not align with the rules of 1940s realism or the production code's limits on supernatural ambiguity. They feared audiences would reject such an abstract conclusion, so the entire concept was rewritten. Laura was made alive after all. Her return was recut into a surprise twist. The ending shifted to a more conventional whodunit resolution rather than a metaphysical revelation. That original ghost ending was banned by the studio before cameras even rolled, but fragments of that darker version remain. Laura's ethereal presence, the surreal, dreamlike tone, and the unnerving soundtrack were all leftovers from that original vision. The version we know is brilliant, but the one we lost might have changed film noir forever. Number 4. The Big Sleep, 1946. Howard Hawks' labyrinthine mystery. The Big Sleep is famous for its confusion. Even Raymond Chandler admitted he couldn't answer who committed one of the central murders. But originally, the film had a much more coherent ending, one that resolved the mystery in a cold, satisfying conclusion. That version was previewed and praised. But Warner Brothers had other plans. Studio executives demanded reshoots and edits to boost the romantic chemistry between Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. They altered the ending to favor screen presence over plot clarity. In doing so, key scenes explaining the mystery were cut. A second version was released with an entirely different final third, one that prioritized mood over resolution. The original ending wasn't scandalous, but it was effectively banned in favor of star power. Hawks reluctantly agreed. Critics today debate which version is superior, but make no mistake, the true resolution of the mystery was deliberately buried. You were never meant to solve it. The studio made sure of that. Number 3. Scarface, 1932. Howard Hawks' original Scarface was a lightning rod for censors. The gangster film ended in a blaze of bullets with Tony Camonte gunned down like a rabid dog in the streets. That ending was deemed too sympathetic to criminals and too brutal in its execution. The Hayes office stepped in. They demanded an alternative where Camonte is captured, tried, and hanged, all according to the moral code of the time. To comply, the studio created two endings, one where Tony dies in a shootout and one where he faces justice. In some cities, only the trial and hanging version was approved. In others, both were banned. Audiences were left with regional versions depending on the morality boards of their state or country. Eventually, the original violent ending prevailed as the preferred version once the production code loosened its grip, but for years you could only see the cleaned-up ending. The raw criminal downfall was banned because it did not offer redemption, only destruction, and that was too honest for censors to allow. Number 2. Frankenstein, 1931. James Whale's Frankenstein shocked audiences not just with its monster, but with its blasphemous implications. The original ending was grim and unrelenting. The creature died in a burning windmill. Dr. Frankenstein did not survive either. He was mortally wounded in the confrontation. The message was clear: man cannot play God without paying the ultimate price. But religious groups and morality watchdogs were outraged. They lobbied for censorship immediately. Under pressure, Universal shot a new ending. Dr. Frankenstein miraculously survives and is seen recovering with his father. The studio even added a toast to the son of the House of Frankenstein, as if celebrating noble legacy. This version replaced the darker ending in most releases. Even earlier in the film, Frankenstein's famous line, "Now I know what it feels like to be God," was cut in several regions, but the ending was the most glaring revision. The banned original cut, tragic and poetic, was lost for decades. Only in restored editions and archival finds has the darker tone been resurrected. Audiences today see a film that straddles horror and compromise. But once upon a time, Frankenstein was meant to end in fire, death, and punishment. The happy ending was not storytelling, it was censorship. So number 1, King Kong, 1933. The image of Kong falling from the Empire State Building is legendary. But it was also considered too brutal for many territories. In the original edit, Kong is not just shot. He is riddled with bullets as the military fires relentlessly. Early test prints showed Kong's body twitching, collapsing in stages. The death was slow, painful, and eerily human. Audiences cried. Some were horrified. Others called it excessive. In several countries, including parts of Europe and Asia, the scene was trimmed or cut entirely. British censors demanded a softened edit. In Japan, the entire death was removed. Censors feared that showing such sympathy for a beast could send the wrong message. That man's violence was monstrous. Some versions even ended before Kong fell, suggesting ambiguity rather than execution. To this day, different versions circulate. The original ending survives, but few know that it was once censored worldwide. The great ape's fall was too much, too real, too tragic. Kong was not just a monster, he was a mirror, and that reflection was banned. These banned endings were erased to protect reputations, preserve illusions, or silence truth, but they survived. Hidden in vaults, whispered in scripts, or restored by time. They show us what studios feared most: honesty. Subscribe for more forgotten history and cinematic secrets they never wanted you to know. Truth always escapes.